In this video, we're going to talk about Caves and Catacombs by Gustavo Cahillo. So let's get into this. Welcome to Solitary RPG. A while back, I received an email from Gustavo asking if I would review some of his product. And it was fun for me to be able to respond back and let him know that I already own all of his products. I have been introduced to his products through other channels and have liked a lot of the things that he has already put out. I do think the Little GM emulator is a great little solo supplement that you can use for your games, but I haven't done a review on it. But in today's video, we're going to talk about Caves and Catacombs. It is broken down into 3 books. So you have the solo game, the core rules here, which is going to be all about character creation, how combat works, and dungeon exploration. Then it's going to go into a second book, which is about overland adventure and different encounters in the overlands. Kind of breaking down each type of region and giving specific encounters for those regions. Really good stuff. And then the last book, which is like the thickest of them all, is the monster manual, giving you all your different creatures that you can encounter, plus adding some additional random events and things that you can put into your game. For this particular video, though, we're just going to focus on the core rules and the dungeon delving experience. This is a very simple RPG style game based on HeroQuest. The author actually refers to using the 2021 version of HeroQuest board because that is accessible for playing the game, which is really cool. I like being able to use products that I already have to play other games. And when I've been playing this and reading it and going through it, if you own Warhammer Quest, you can use the dungeon generation from Warhammer Quest to also play this game. With all that being said, I feel the best way to share more about this game is actually just to play it. It's just that simple. It's HeroQuest, so it's not, there's not a lot to get into it. There's a little bit of information about the world, introducing you to kind of like the background of this story. Just so you know, all this amazing art is public domain art, and it is credited here. All artwork public domain. So here you're going to get your setting, information about getting started. On this page, you're going to get some of the information about the different attributes and how they're used. And then you just go into character creation. Pretty straightforward. Character creation, in my opinion, kind of follows that of 4 Against Darkness. And you might feel this is more in kin with 4 Against Darkness than HeroQuest. Simply because it's a dungeon generation where you're rolling and creating the rooms. But all you do is copy down the information from the page onto your character sheet, and there's your character. And once you've gotten that done, you're going to just start creating your quest and your dungeon, start getting all your stuff put together, and then you'll finally get into the rules. And this will talk about the rule mechanics and how everything works for creating your dungeon, and how combat works, and skill checks work, and sneaking around, and just all the different things. And then in the very back of this, you're going to get some supporting tables and your monsters. Very short rule book, and gives you all the information you need to have just a fun little afternoon with the index. We're talking, what, 63 pages, 64 pages. And most of it is tables and monsters. The rules themselves are like 3 to 4 pages. So you can just get up and playing this game real quick. I will point out some feedback about this game as we go through the review. I understand with game creation, sometimes when you're trying to fit a lot of information in a small amount of pages, You have to make certain considerations for making all that work. One of the first things I want to point out here is in this footnote that additionally to the initial equipment for your characters, all PCs start with a torch and healing potion, and that will not be listed under their starting equipment. So I've just went through and wrote it down because, let's be honest, I'm probably never going to refer back to this page. I'm probably going to forget about that. So this is to help me not forget about that. You can play the bard, the cleric, the druid, the fighter, the ranger, the thief, and the wizard. And really all you do is you just copy down this information into your character sheets, which look like this. I printed 2 per page just to make my life a little bit easier. Got Rad, the druid, he's level 1. The values for their attack, defense, vitality, and number of spells just comes out of the book, and then I just listed all their information. And it's just that simple. So let's look at the characters I actually created. The fighter, which is your most simple and easiest character to create. You're going to see like their attributes. The attack says same as weapon +1. So you'll see the longsword has an attack attribute of 3, which means you roll 3 dice. You just roll your dice. You're looking for 4s, 5s, and 6s. A 5 and a 6 is a complete success. You hit the enemy, life is good. On a 4, you hit the enemy counterattacked and hit you as well. So you both do damage to each other. So that's basic combat. Chainmail, shield, defense 4. So the way defense works in this game, it's a resource. So when you first take damage, you go through the defense before you go through your vitality, which is your HP. So the thing that's cool about the defense is you can keep renewing it. So when you have a combat and you kill something, if they have any equipment on them, such as armor or anything, you can put that on yourself. You're kind of repairing your armor. It's kind of how I see it. And then you can get your defense back up. So it's something you're renewing throughout the game. Renewing your vitality or your HP can be done with like healing potions and spells and things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of creating your fighter. You just write down the information for your characters right onto the character sheet. For the druid, you know, they have spells. You have a number of spells that you can cast. This one has 2. You pick your 2 spells, or you can randomly roll if you wanted to. And you just write all this information down on your character sheet and you're good to go. And you just have all your different characters that you can choose from. Here you can take advantages and disadvantages. So if you take an advantage, you have to take a disadvantage. They're pretty brutal, so you really have to want to take one of these. This is a brutally hard combat game. Like, characters are going to die, and taking advantages and disadvantages does make it more challenging. I see this as an option. I don't think you have to do this, and I wouldn't recommend it at first. Maybe recommend this later as the game progresses. If you have a character that survives and maybe they've over time, you know, kind of create some advantages and disadvantage through maybe a lot of combat, things like that, you may consider taking one of these later on. But for your first couple games, stay away. Then you jump into creating your quest. You're just going to roll in these charts and create your quest. I'm just going to use the back of my character sheet to create my quest. The first thing is the dungeon type. So I'm just going to write down all this information as we go. Roll my 2d6. I've got 8, which is going to give me a catacombs, which is very fitting because that's the name of the game. The next one is the location, which is a d6. It's a 4, so we're in the mountains. And all I'm doing is gathering up all of my information so that I can play my first adventure. Construction type. So is this a natural formation, or was it carved in stone or masonry? I got 5, so that is going to be masonry or carved in stone. Obviously, if we're in the mountains, I'm going to consider it carved in stone. So I'll just circle that. The status. So how is this dungeon? Is it functioning or is it old and abandoned? It's a 1, so it's well maintained. I'm just going to write that down. Dungeon size. So this is kind of an interesting concept. How many floors is the dungeon? And you just roll a d6. Oops, keep it on the book, Mike. I got a 3, so I'm going to be 1 floor. And this is important to roll during your dungeon creation, because the way you're going to adventure is once you get to the last room of a floor, that's where you're going to find your stairwell going down to the next floor. And then lighting. How is this dungeon lit? I like this concept because if you don't need to use a torch, you don't have to take up a hand using the torch, which is cool. We got 3. It looks like I need to use a torch. So there are some, normal rules for torches in this game. It does take up a hand, which means you can't use your shield. Just things, standard stuff. Nothing new and exciting there. And then you've got this little theme on naming your dungeon. You have these 3 different ways to name your dungeon. You just have to pick which one you want to do. I'm just going to go dungeon type, which I have Catacombs, and then dungeon theme 1. So Catacombs, and this is where you're going to roll 4 d6s and add them all up. So there's 7, 10, 16. Despair. Catacombs of Despair will be the name of my dungeon. So what we'll do is just write that at the top here. And now we're going to roll up like, why are we going to this dungeon? So now we're going to get into the quest. So I will just make a new line, a new spot for the quest. This is just going to be a roll of d6, which is 5. Defeat a special enemy, roll in the special enemies table on page 22. So we will just make a note of what our quest is. So then we go to page 22. We're going to roll on special enemies. It's a d12 or 2d6 roll. So I rolled a 10. So we just go over to the 10 here. And I'm going to make a note, because with the special enemies and on 1 floor, they're going to be last room, which is important because this is a rule of the game. We're going to come up to the corrupt cleric. And I don't need to write down all of these stats and information about the cleric, because I will discover this cleric in the last room. So we can just make a note of it and move on. And now we're going to get into playing the game. First thing we're going to do after we've kind of created all of our adventure and we wrote down all of our character information is how big is our dungeon. So we're going to create a dungeon floor, which I will put back up here in the dungeon section. How big is our dungeon? It's a d12 roll. Keep it on the table. I got an 8, which is going to make it a medium-sized dungeon, which is 1d6 plus 8, which is going to be 9 rooms. So with that, only rooms count towards that goal of 8. Corridors don't count. So we're going to be graphing this out. So I'll just go ahead and mark out 8 boxes now. And that way I will be able to track them as we are playing. And that's just part of the rules, because the way this is all going to work, it's going to be considered the last room. So that's going to be talked about as we go through more of the dungeon creation and getting into the rules. The entrance of the dungeon, just like in Hero Quest, you come down the stairs and you're in a dungeon. And what I would recommend is, however you want to do this, a lot of times when I'm doing random dungeon generation, I kind of start at the bottom of a page, and after playing this game a few dozen times, I've discovered that you may want to start up a little bit on your adventure page to give you some room in case you come back down, kind of like starting in the middle of the room. And the first door is unlocked. So we are all set up for our first room to create, or corridor, whatever we roll. Then we're going to get into the dungeon segments. These are the rooms or corridors that you're going to be creating as you play. and these pages you're going to be referring to quite a bit throughout your game. And then after that, you're going to get more into like how you handle the things that you generate. So if you find a trap, how do you handle it? If you have combat, how does combat work? Spells, all of that kind of stuff. You got some other tables towards the back about searching for treasures. So if you find certain items in a room, you can search those for treasures. Or if you have to do a random treasure, there's a chart here for you. You have some other rules in the back about leveling up. Here it talks about torches. So a PC can carry a torch, but it takes up a hand. So if my fighter was to carry the torch with his longsword and his shield, he would have to give up probably the shield or the longsword, whichever, because the torch will take up a hand. That's what it's talking about here. I'll have my druid carry the torch. There's also a little note here about magic. If you have a wizard in your party, they can cast a spell that doesn't count against their current spells for creating light in the dungeon. It doesn't say how long that spell lasts or anything like that. I would say as long as the wizard's alive, the spell is working. But you could modify that rule a little bit. Maybe if the wizard takes a certain amount of damage, they lose concentration and the spell goes away. That's up to you. But that's towards the back, talking about torches. It's a pretty standard rule. You got information here about leveling up. So the way you level up is a character levels up every 5 quests that you complete, and then it tells you what they level up on. Good luck with that. Hopefully your character survived that long. Here we're going to talk about some supporting tables. So it kind of goes over the different armor types, their cost, the defense value, and some special notes like the forest cloak can only be worn by the druid, and the wizard robe, the wizard, and that's about it. The different weapons you can find. So as you're playing the game, you can come into combat with creatures and other encounters. They may have better weapons than you. You can take their weapons and then you'll adjust your attack values or defense values if you're taking armor accordingly. Some potions that you can find. Then you get into all the enemies. They have some information about the different encounters, their attack value, defense value, vitality, and what treasures they are carrying. And that is what you'll pull from when you're fighting the Death Knight or the goblins or anything like that. The enemies automatically hit you in this game. You do not roll for the enemies to hit you. If you wanted to, you could do that to make your characters more survivable, but they automatically do whatever their attack value is, and you still have to go through their defenses before you attack their vitality, just like your character does. So you have your standard encounters that you would expect to see in this type of a game. And then the appendix gives you some oracle information if you want to ask questions and add a little bit more of the RPG element, playing and published modules, and then again back to the HeroQuest board, and then you have your index. So now that we have our adventure created, we're just going to jump right into creating our segments or our dungeon rooms. The best practice I have found for doing this is to have a piece of scrap paper or journal or something like that, roll up all of the components for the room, draw it out on your map, and then start the role play experience. Going through the door, looking around the room, making your decisions on what you're going to do, avoid any hazards, do any combat, and then move on to the next room. But kind of doing the roll and write concept. So we're just going to go with number 1. First thing we're going to roll, and this is going to be a little bit on off camera here, is the corridor. We rolled a 5, so we're going to have a room. So just write that down. How big is the room going to be? That's another D6. I rolled a 1, so it's going to be a tiny room. So a tiny room is only 2 squares. Now down here, this is where I had to do a little interpretation of the rules. So we get kind of like a room size or corridor size and shape. And at first I thought I was supposed to roll on this table to determine the size of shape. And after playing, I was like, this makes no sense. I just rolled a tiny room, which is 2 squares. I'm not going to make it a circle or triangle, a cross, a pentagon. I'm not going to be able to do any of those things. So the way I'm interpreting the rules, if you roll a 1 through 4, your room size or corridor, they're just rectangular, square, or straight. Only when you roll a 5 or a 6, you would roll on this table to get the result that is different. That is how I've interpreted the rules, and it works for me, and it's been very helpful. Here we're going to roll on the contents. This is where you're going to roll 2 dice and figure out what you have in the room. So I have a 5, which is a threat. So this is going to be maybe an encounter or a trap. And the other is a 6, which is a special content. So we're going to just keep moving forward. So I did not get furniture. I got a threat, so we roll a d6. I rolled a 4, which is going to be an encounter. So under my threat, I will just write encounter. We didn't get a trap. What is my encounter? This is where we roll 2d6. I've got an 11, which is a death knight. They are pretty brutal, but they come with great treasure, so I like having them. Now over here, you're going to see the quantity for your encounters. So if you just have a number, that is just 1 Minotaur. This is just going to be 1 Death Knight. If you have a little person, like a little icon of a person, that's going to be however many players you have in your party. So I'm playing with 2, so I would have 2 mummies. And then here you have ×2, ×4, and ×2. So this would be number of players times whatever the value is. I will be honest with you, I think this should be +2, +4, +2. I think times, like, so if I'm running two characters, and I get the goblins, I got 8 goblins, they're pretty much going to slaughter me. That's a pretty hard combat. So I've kind of changed this to be a plus instead of a times. That is a personal choice, how I am trying to just make my characters survive a little bit longer, so I have a little bit more role playing with them versus, you know, going into a room getting, you know, if I had a party of 4, 16 goblins, they're just going to slaughter me. But you can change that if you want. That is something that I will be doing in this game. So anyway, so since we know we have a Death Knight, we can go to the back of the rule book and we can pull the stats for the Death Knight prior to doing the combat, just so we're kind of ready for it. So they have an attack of 4, a defense of 5, a vitality of 8. They have full plate armor, which is awesome. So if I can beat this combat, or if I can beat this Death Knight, I will get a full plate armor, which is better survivability. They have a shield, they have a long sword, and they come with 1d6 coin. So I just write all my information down, and I'm good to go. So what other things do we need to do? We have special content. So on the next page, you're going to do the 4d6, add them together. So look at that roll. That is awesome. So we have 12, we have obelisks. So I will just write that down. There are no special rules for what that is. That is strictly up to you to decide on what that is. So now we're going to roll up for how many doors go in the dungeon room. So we're going to just make a note about doors. The way it works is if you're in a room, you roll 2d6. If you're in a corridor, you roll 1d6. So we're going to roll 2d6. I got 2, which is north, and 6, which is none. So I'll just make a note that the door goes to the north. I want to talk a little bit about the doors and the rules here. The way the rules are written, your chart on a 1 or a 6, you have no doors. Then you have doors to the north, east, west, and south. Pretty straightforward. if you roll in the chart and you roll like a 1, and let's say you came in a door from the north, but you rolled a north again. Basically, you've just rolled that there's no doors in this room. Okay, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Here it says you just roll again. So you just re-roll. Well, let's say we rolled again, and now we got a 1 and a 6. Now I have no doors. And so if you're just reading this part of the rules, you're kind of under the impression you just keep rolling until you get doors. Well, I don't think that was the intention of the author, because if you come down here, you can end up not having any doors, and then you got to search for a secret door, and you've got to keep searching all the rooms that you have explored until you find a secret door. So that's something I don't know, maybe this paragraph should have been put up here, or maybe there should have been a notation here that you only roll once. So if you roll and you have no rooms, you re-roll one more time, and this would happen a lot more on corridors because you're only rolling 1 die. Re-roll one more time. If you do not find anything on your re-roll, then it's a dead end, and you would either have to look for secret doors. So let's take a real example. So like this is an old map from a previous game. I'm going north here in this corridor. Let's say I roll my d6. Oop, I got a 1, which means no doors. So this would be a dead end. So at that point, I would get one more reroll. Oop, I rolled a 6. No door. So that means I would have to start searching for a secret door, and I would just flip over to the secret door rules here. When trying to find a secret door, roll a skill test. On a 3 or lower, unable to find a secret door. On a 4, find a secret door, but it's stuck, and there's special rules for knocking down stuck doors over here. 5 or higher, you find a secret door. So we roll. I rolled a 6. I found a secret door, and then I can just put it wherever. It doesn't tell you you have to roll for where it goes. You just find a secret door. So it gives you kind of that freedom to put it wherever. On page 33, it's going to tell you if the doors are locked or not. It's a D12 roll. I rolled a 6. I look under here. My door is unlocked. So we just make a note that my door is unlocked. So now that we've created everything for our room, I will immediately cross out one of my spots on my room tracker. We need to create a tiny room with 2 squares. What I will do is draw it out like this, and I have a door going to the north. Inside of here there is a Death Knight. So the game does offer like optional rules if you want to use them, and one of the optional rules is enemy reaction. Personally, this is a Death Knight at the entrance of a room. I kind of have a feeling that Death Knight is guarding the room. They're immediately going to attack and kill me. But you can roll if you wanted to, and I got a 3. Well, attacks immediately. But this is an optional rule. You do not need to use that. And there are some other optional rules throughout this game that you will be able to explore if you wanted to. And one of those other optional rules is rolling for initiative. The game states that your characters attack first, and that's how we're going to play it. But if you wanted to, you could roll for initiative. So what we're going to do is my fighter is going to attack first. They have 3 dice in their attack pool. So they roll 3 dice. I rolled a 3, a 5, and a 6. I also get a +1, but nothing happens above a 6. A 5 and a 6 are just successes. A 4 is a success with a counterattack. Anything 3 and lower is a miss. You just take your highest value dice, which is my 6, and the amount of damage that I do is equal to, with my modifiers, of my attack value. So I will be doing 4 points of damage to the Death Knight. So they will now only have 1 defense point left. So I didn't harm them, I just damaged their armor. And that's it. My fighter is done. So now it would be up to my druid to decide what they can do. Now, druids have spells, and the way spells work in this game is you start with a number of spells that you pick from your list during character creation, and during the quest, when you use a spell, it's gone. It's forgotten. And until the next quest, you do no longer have that spell. So you want to make sure if you do have any casters that you're saving that spell for that time that you really think you need it. So I don't think at this point my spell would be worth using. However, I do have a companion. I have a wolf companion that has 2 attack dice, 2 defense, and 3 vitality. This is just a little friend of mine, so we're going to have the companion attack on behalf of the druid because they are better at attacking than the druid. And we got 2 dice. I got a 4, so this is going to be interesting. It'll take out the last point of armor and do 1 point of vitality damage, but a 4 is a counterattack. This is going to basically really hurt the wolf. So the wolf has 2 defense, so we'll cross that out. Now it has 0 defense, plus 2 points of damage to its vitality, leaving it 1 vitality point left. So the wolf's almost dead. Damn Death Knight already killing my wolf. And that would end my combat. And this is where now I would have to decide. The Death Knight did a counterattack, and now it will do its normal attack. Who's it going to attack? I am going to decide. So if you were playing Hero Quest or Warhammer Quest, you would have everybody engaged in combat. So who's touching who, but this is a pen and paper version of it. So you can kind of decide on your own how that's going to work. But I am going to just say the Death Knight is attacking Ugg, my warrior, doing 4 points of damage, which immediately just goes through the armor, and I have no more armor left. So all I have left is my vitality. That would end the first round of combat. So now it's our turn to go again. Ugg is going to roll 3d6. Failure. I got nothing. So that's the end of that combat. Now what am I going to do? Well, room 1 looks like we're going to get brutally beat up first round. So I can do one thing. I can entangle the Death Knight so that it cannot come back at us. So it's basically like tree branches or roots or something, entangle it. It's a druid, so it's a natural thing. We can try to entangle the Death Knight so that we have at least a chance to kill it. We'll do our best. So casting a spell is pretty straightforward. What I really like about this game is the dice mechanics. You're not looking up a lot of information in the game. Once you got the basic understanding of how the mechanics work, all you gotta do is pick up a d6, roll it. On a 4, you have a success with a complication or counterattack. 5 or 6 is an automatic success, and that's for everything. Skill checks, casting spells, combat. Everything works on the same principles of the dice mechanics, just the complications sometimes might be a little bit different depending on what you're doing. So let's roll to see if we can cast Entangled. 6. So we've cast Entangled, so now this is gone. I no longer have it. And I forget the spell. The complication for casting spells is if I would have rolled a 4, I also forget another spell. So you're taking your chance on that. So now the Druids took its turn. It entangled it. It only entangles the Death Knight for 1 turn. So now we have to try to take this creature out. We could run, like if I was feeling pretty bad about this right now. We could run and we would just be leaving the dungeon, and that's where we could have some narrative play. And if you were to run away, you roll 2 dice, but you're going to want to roll a different colored dice. So for this game, you want to have 5d6, but one of them is a different color or type so that you can do that. But if you were to run, the different type is the encounter, whichever one rolls higher. So we rolled higher than the encounter, so we just run away. But if it was the other way around, they would get an attack on us. But because the Death Knight's entangled, we don't have to worry about that. So with all that being said, I probably would take the risk and go one more time. Keeping in mind, this game is based on a board game. This is not based on an RPG of any sort. It is taking a board game and making it more of an RPG. So it's not about the long-term play of the game. You're just having some fun. This is a very fun game. You can create as much immersion and agency in this game as you want. So if I really wanted to do that, I might retreat out and go try to find another way into the dungeon or do something else, but we're just gonna roll it. So let's see what we do here. I rolled a 6, so that would be me hitting the Death Knight, taking it down to 3 vitality points. Now we're gonna come at it with the wolf. We got to keep in mind this Death Knight is entangled. What do we got? We got a 5, which is going to do 2 more points of vitality damage. It's down to 1 point of vitality. But now it breaks free on its turn from the combat. And then goes in for that last kill. Rolls the 6, killing the Death Knight. And that is how combat works. And that's what I like about board games. Because it's all about those dice rolls and having fun. So now we come back to our characters here. We have 0 defense left on our wolf, and it's down to 1 vitality point, so our companion is badly hurt. My defense for my fighter is gone. However, with this combat, we get full plate armor. So this is where we get to use our imagination a little bit and say that the Death Knight and Ugg are the same size. And if we come into our rule book and we go to the back to the additional support tables, full plate armor is worth 1,000 coins. We can sell it, but it gives me 4 points of defense. Plus, he also has a shield, and a shield gives you another point of defense. So now I'm at 5 points of defense. I'm going to take this chainmail away. So make sure your pencil has a good eraser. And we're going to write full plate. And then I'll just do defense is 4, but with my shield is 5. So we've taken these 2 things away. So the Death Knight also has a longsword. I'm going to go ahead and give the longsword to my druid, which is going to increase its attack value to 3. And I will keep my wooden staff, but I'm just going to make a note here for right now. He has a longsword, and that the wooden staff is just kind of carried off to his side. Or on his back, or just wherever they would carry it. There's nothing about encumbrance in this game. Now, if you wanted to tinker with the rules a little bit and create some sort of encumbrance, but I think the wooden staff is necessary for the druid, because when you're looking at the druid, they have a totem, and there's no information about what that totem is. To me, I think that's the staff, and that's how the druid casts any of its spells or magical powers. That's just how I'm playing it. So he has to keep the staff, but we want to survive also, so we need some more attack value. One of the way the rules are written is you can fix your armor, you can fix your defense. The wolf doesn't say it like has armor, but in my mind, I would think the druid would want to protect its wolf, and maybe it has some sort of leather or chainmail armor on it. When it took that hit, the chainmail broke, so we're just taking the chainmail from Ugg and putting it onto the wolf. You can also put the chainmail on the druid if you wanted to. Either way works. I just need to try to keep that wolf companion alive for one more round. I could also give the wolf companion my healing potion and bring it back up to full health. I just don't think the wolf companion is that valuable in the game. With just an attack of 2, a defense of 2. I've already kind of boosted the druid up, so we'll keep it alive for one more time. So that was room 1. So now what we're going to do is just go back to, let me get all this out of the way. Now we just go back to our tables and charts, and we're just going to go to number 2. What do we get? And we start rolling on our chart. We got a 3, which is going to be another room. And we repeat the same process that we did before. We have a 4, which is going to be medium, which is 6 squares. And this is just going to be, I'm not going to roll on this chart here. This is going to be a square or rectangular room because it's a 4, so I'm not going to do any special shapes. And then what is in the contents of the room, we got a double threat. So one of the rules here, roll twice on the table. If you get the same result, ignore it. So we're just going to ignore one of the threats. Now we're going to roll on the threat table. What do we got? We got a 3. We got another encounter. So we're just kind of writing down all of our details right now. We're going to go, what is our encounter? We rolled a 5. We got skeletons. So this is where what I was talking about earlier. So now we're going to get into this concept. You know, is this supposed to be +2 or -2? I think, you know, I'm running 2 characters, so ×2 +2, it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. But if I would have rolled the goblins, that could have been an issue. That's why I'm rolling this. I'm playing this as pluses, not times. So we got skeletons. So we're going to have 4 skeletons in this area. And we go back to the back of the book and we find our lovely skeletons. They have an attack of 3, a defense of 1, and a vitality of 2. They carry a shield and longsword, and that would be that. And then we don't have any special features. We're going to come over here and roll for our doors. We got a room, so we roll 2. We got a door to the south and a door to the north. So I'm just going to make a note about doors. North and south. Now we can't do south because we're coming in. If we go back to our map, if this is north, then coming down south, so that would be the same room. So basically we've just got one room, and that's, or one door going to the north. And is this door locked? I wrote down the little lock chart here, and I rolled an 8, which means the door is locked. So we will either have to try to pick the lock, or we're gonna have to bash the door down. And that's everything. So let me put this to the side, and then we come out with our chart. We've got a 6 squares and a door to the north. So you can make this whatever you want. I am just going to go like that. That is our new room. And we have 4 skeletons in there. Now the way multi-combat works is everybody breaks off in combat. So we got the druid and the warrior, 2 skeletons on each. If my druid doesn't take out any of the skeletons, they attack back. They get a +1 to their attack value for every other creature in combat. And in a room, this makes perfect sense. I get it. And it's pretty standard for board games. Corridors could be a little bit more complicated, especially when you're dealing with higher numbers. Let's say this was the goblins and we were in a corridor and I had 8 goblins and 2 characters fighting. Like, should you get all of the bonuses for the goblins in the back? This is why the game gets a little brutal and you have to do some interpretation. I pull from the 4 Against Darkness concept for fighting corridors. 2 in the front, that's it. That's all that can fight, and they're just engaged. The ones in the back cannot engage in the combat. That's just how I do it. You can do whatever you want. That's up to you. So that ends everything that we needed to do. One of the nice things about this book, or these rules, is they do have additional details. So if you want to add some atmosphere, you can, and get a little bit more of that immersion going on for the game. But if you just want to hack and slash, this is the game for you. So we're going to have 2 and 2. So who's going first is going to be Ugg. He's going to go with his 3 dice. I don't need to look anything up because we know the mechanics of the game. We got a 4, 5, and a 3, you know, with my +1 that goes to 6. So we do 4 points of damage to the skeletons. Damage carries over. So we have multiple combats. All the damage would carry over. So you got 4 skeletons. We can just do a little chart here. Skeleton 1, defense 1, vitality 2. That means 3. So he's dead. And then the next skeleton is at -1. My damage carries over to the next skeleton, and I do 4 points of damage. So that fight's over. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn my attention to the druid. The druid's going to attack the 2 skeletons on him. He gets 3 dice with his longsword. He gets a 4, so he hits, but then he gets countered attacked. So these 2 are on my fighter, these 2 are on my druid. So he hits, doing 3 points of damage, so he kills one of his skeletons. So now we can say the other one's attacking back. They have an attack value of 3, so that takes away his defense, and he has -2 vitality now. And I chose to do it that way because I got more damage with my attack dice and not sending the wolf in. So now that ends the first round of combat. We still have combatants coming at us. They just automatically hit. The first one's going to do 3 points of damage to my defense on Ugg, my fighter, but 3 points of vitality on my druid, taking the druid down to -5. So he only has 1 point of health left. So we roll our 3 dice. I rolled a 5. It would go to a 6, causing 4 points of damage. Killing off this 1 second skeleton with 2 of its points, taking out the defense and taking the last one down to -2. And then the druid would fight, killing off the last one. It's very board game-ish when it comes to the game, and you will have to decide how you want to play it. My goal is to interpret the rules any way I can to keep my characters alive, because combat is brutal. You already see my druid's down to -5 HP. My damage is down on my fighter. I can repair some of that damage because these skeletons have shields, so I can get 1 point of my defense back, and I can drink my healing potion to bring back my druid a little bit. But at the end of the day, going to have another combat, and this is just going to continue until we reach all of the 8 rooms, getting to our special encounter. And hopefully along the way we build up our characters enough with armor and potions and things like that that we can actually survive. But if not, we're probably going to die along the way. So that's a general way of how this game is played. It's actually a lot of fun if you're just looking for kind of that afternoon style game where you don't have to think a lot about the rules. You can interpret some of these rules and make changes to them to fit your play style. And that's what I like about how simple these rules are written. My goal is to continue to tinker with these rules and just add some different concepts that I like from other games. Like I already mentioned, fighting in corridors, pulling from 4 against darkness. I think that is a rule that would be beneficial in this game because there's nothing about combat in corridors. That's pretty much my thoughts on it. This is a fun little afternoon game that doesn't take a lot of prep. No prep, really, just rolling on a bunch of charts. And they're not complicated rules. You can kind of remember them pretty easily, and you can just have some fun. I have not gone through the Overland Adventure yet. There might be some additional rules. I know there's some new skills for some of the classes in the Overland Adventure, but I will be doing a review on that in the coming weeks. And then for the monster encounters, there's some additional information to add a little bit more immersion into the game, and some new challenges that you can play with as you continue to try to survive in Caves and Catacombs. So thank you for watching, and have a great day.